Before I start, I once again want to thank everyone watching today and for this wonderful group of panelists here. We are in the brink of a global pandemic, and we're talking about women in perfusion. But this was scheduled quite a few months before all of this was happening, and I appreciate that we can still do it and that everyone's here to support this talk today. I didn't think we could go out without talking about growing your family as a perfusionist when we're talking about women in perfusion. I think it's a big topic that we need to just dive in and discuss and not avoid. So with that said, here's my talk. The objective of my talk today is to stimulate conversation and to give support to mothers and future mothers trying to navigate through the process of growing their families while continuing to work as a perfusionist. It can be such an exciting time for families, but it also can be a very anxious time trying to figure out how are we going to balance this, working through the pregnancy and working as a new mother. When I started thinking about all of the questions someone would have, the list could go on and on. I mean, what are my employers going to say? How are my coworkers going to respond? I mean, most of the time when people say we are expecting or we have a baby, I feel like coworkers are just praying that it's a puppy and not a pregnancy. We have to decide, when do I tell my boss? When is it too early? What if I miscarry and then I told them I was pregnant and now I have to tell them I'm not pregnant? Could I have birthing complications? Could I have pregnancy complications? And you really have to start looking at how much time do I feel like I'll need to take off of work? Will I have to take off time before the pregnancy, and that will shorten my time with the baby after the pregnancy? Will this affect my job in any way? Will I be looked at differently? Will it affect any advancements? And how will it affect my finances if I go for the amount of time that I want to be off with unpaid leave? And then before we go back, we have to work on our child care plans. Now, these are just issues that every expecting mom that is working has to look at. But as a perfusionist, it can be exceptionally challenging. We do not have structured hours. We have to be on call. It's hard to make appointments oftentimes. Our schedules change day to day. And often we have low staffing numbers, and one person out can make a big difference in our group. So going to an account where there's maybe only one or two perfusionists could cause some serious concerns for someone expecting a child. Not to mention our long operating room hours and you just don't know when that's going to happen. So if we are stuck in the OR, I feel like even not pregnant, I have these three fears. Fear of the 3 Ps. Well, one of them I don't have, but what if I have to go? What if I have to puke? And what if I need to pump? Challenges for sure when you're in an operating room. And these are all things that I see on our message boards on, especially coming back to work if women are wanting to pump. Women in the workforce right now, it's already been mentioned by Terry, we are slightly over 50% of the entire workforce. But I was actually surprised to see in the graduating class of 2016 and 2017, women actually had a higher percentage of earning bachelor's degrees, master's degrees, and doctorate degrees. When you compare that to women in perfusion, we're still at that 35.7%, as has already been mentioned. I thought it was interesting that all three of our talks, we came up with the same slides because it actually is a big factor for us that once this 20 to 39 age group, where we're pretty much equal and on target with the workforce at 50%, And that's also our age group that is going to be starting families. So it's going to be a big concern for that age group, and maybe the 50 to 69 category that wanted to avoid dealing with it or avoid the topic are going to be forced to. And as they start retiring, we are going to become that 50% group. I think being at this 35%, I'll go back on my slide, has been, I think the lower that number is for females in a field, the more they tend to avoid dealing with pregnancy and coming back after a family and treat it like a crisis scenario. So the first thing when you are talking about being on leave, you should know the legal rights, and you should know your company's leave. And we're going to go into each one of those. The Family Medical Leave Act, most people do say the FMLA, is for companies that have 50 or more employees within a 75-mile radius. Any company smaller than that is not required to follow this law and would have their own set rules. The qualifying reasons for this 12 weeks of job-protected unpaid leave are for the birth, adoption, or fostering of a child, to care for an immediate family member with a serious health injury or condition, like a spouse, child, or parent, or when you yourself are unable to work due to serious health conditions. So note that this is unpaid leave, just securing your job. And if you are in a small company, they are not required to follow this law. Now, just recently, just in December of 2019, Congress approved and Trump signed paid leave for federal workers, providing 12 weeks of paid parental leave. This means the father or the mother, and if the federal employees work together, say the father and mother both work there, they would have to split this 12 weeks. Now you may say this has no bearing on us, but I think what it does is provide us with the start of change in this country. Let's see. Before this law passed in December, the United States was the only industrialized nation that did not pay parental leave for its federal employees. There is still no federal law that requires companies outside of the federal government to pay family leave, but this is a step in a positive direction from private companies maybe going towards offering some paid leave. If you can see this slide, I think it's very reflective on the way the United States has looked at paid leave. We are the bottom of the list with 0 weeks of paid leave. And really one of the only countries that were in this category was the United States and Papua New Guinea. There are a couple states that offer paid leave. I think this is really to help some of our lower income people, and it requires employees and employers to contribute to a paid leave fund, and each state has their own reasons, qualifying reasons, including DC here. These are the states with paid family leave. And I don't know if any of you listening are in any of these states. I'd be very curious to hear how this works and if anyone has actually used it. Another option you have when you're employed is you can either have short-term disability through your work or privately. With short-term disability, you do need a doctor's note, so typically it's a set amount of time for if you have a C-section or a delivery. So it's more based on the medical need to be off and not just total time off. talking about private companies and family leave, currently only 14% of the United States workers have access to paid family leave. Many times parents are not taking the time they need off to be home with their newborn, adopted, or foster child because they simply cannot afford it. 1 in 4 mothers go back to work within 10 days of giving birth. In a survey done, 83% of millennials said they would be more likely to join a company if they offered paid time off. So
specifically paid family
leave
for having children.
Right, or family leave. It could be either or. But
Okay.
This study says if they offered paid leave.
Okay.
Okay. The time to know your company's policies is before you start. You should be asking the question, what is your family leave policy? What's your maternity leave policy? And a smaller company, is this negotiable? I think this should become a normal question that both men and women ask when reviewing their benefit package. Knowing your company's policy before you start helps you set your expectations of how much time you will be able to take off. This is an important slide for me because why don't we ask that question? We don't because it's very evident in our culture still that women having children there's a fear that it's in direct conflict of having a career. Why? Because we're believed to be the primary caretakers, and the primary parent needed to be off with growing families. And Terry touched on that also. This belief creates a bias against women during the hiring process, and it's a big reason why we don't ask what the policy is before being hired. It's like putting a spotlight on us that we may need time off to have a child. When you're discussing these plans with your work, communication is key on both sides, with the employer and the employee talking about the pregnancy and talking early about it. Both parties can start making plans. The employer can make plans for covering the time that you're off and know what the expectations are. And you can start planning and having less stress, knowing that you have some sort of agreement. I say let's start getting creative, and many companies are now. Right now, it seems like everyone is just working as long as they can till the end. They don't want to ask for anything special, but I don't see why. I know if we had an employee recently pregnant, and we said, keep communicating with us. Let us know where you're at so that we can, towards the end, have a transition plan towards delivery. Do we need to go to a max of 8-hour shifts? Is it time to stop taking call? Any doctor's notes on restrictions are very helpful with this. And the other thing I wanted to bring up is that this 12 weeks that you are entitled to of unpaid leave, it does not have to be taken all at once. So as long as it's for the same reason and within the same year, you could take some time before you have the baby, and as you return, you may need a few days or work that out with your employer before you come back. And then also many companies now are doing a reintroduction to work plan. So when you come back the first day after maternity leave, maybe you don't do a 14-hour case or go on call. There can be a transition and a time to go back to that. Private companies are starting to offer paid time off for family leave. A lot of this is because instead of just avoiding the elephant in the room, when you have 50% of the workforce being women, this is a topic that's going to come up over and over. And companies that embrace it, it can be a great tool for recruiting and retaining valuable employees. And definitely a marker for job satisfaction, and includes maternity and paternity leave. It is not just a female issue. The number of companies offering gender-neutral leave meaning equal number of weeks of maternity and paternity, almost doubled from 2015 to 2018. Equality between paternal and maternal leave will be a huge step for men and women. This is a talk for women, so I said women, but men and women both taking leave when growing a family normalizes the practice and neutralizes the work environment. I think Terry touched on this also. Equal leave will lessen the stigma of pregnant working mothers, which could lead to less bias in hiring, less negativity towards women in the workplace, and less stress on creating and nurturing families. And I've cited my sources here, and I wanted to end with, I love my profession. We're amazing and dynamic, and we also are mothers with families, and I don't think that one or the other needs to suffer. So to finish, here's my family. My husband, Ro, who's also a perfusionist, and my daughter, now I've added a son-in-law and 2 grandkids. And I just wanted to end with, I actually have not been a pregnant mother in perfusion. I had my daughter before that. But my talk also dealt with family leave. And let's make sure, as we're taking care of other people's family members, that we take the time we need for the people that we love also.
Very good. Excellent.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Good job. Very nice job. Good work. Okay, ladies. Anne?
So you just said that you were not you were not pregnant while you're in perfusion. You had your daughter
Before that, yes.
And I think we had in some of our conversations, I think some of the other women on the panel talked about being pregnant in perfusion school. I know that we did have a few students come through, and it was really amazing what those girls, they would have their baby on a Saturday and be back in school on Monday.
Wow.
And I was kind of like, what in the world? I mean, you're impressed, but at the same time, you're thinking to yourself, is that what the expectation is? So I guess for the panel and for you, Stephanie, what was the expectation if you were planning to have more children while you were in perfusion? Did it come into consideration that you wouldn't, or how did you think about it?
I think I definitely had a fear of it. With all of those questions, how would you deal with your employer? I think the big question for me was, would I be able to take the time off that I felt I needed? And I think looking back, I thought no, that I would not be able to take as much time as I wanted because I would need to go back to work so fast to not burden my coworkers and not to make a big deal about it. But when I'm looking at people I work with now, nurses, CRNAs, they are taking their full 12 weeks and without question and no thought about it. And then a lot of times what I'm seeing now is then their spouse will take their 12 weeks. And then that's 6 months that you can be home with the baby and start making your plans and making it easier, when the baby's up all night and those kind of things. So, and I think it's such a small time in your career. I mean, I'm looking at a, say, 30, 40-year career, and if I had 1 or 2 children and I was off for 3 months or 6 months, that's such a small time
In the scheme of
things that I would hope that people would start looking at having the ability to take the time off that they need. And if they're going to be at an account that's only 1 or 2 perfusionists, I think they should have clear plans with that employer that they will bring in someone to cover that time, or that might not be a job for you if you're in that time in your life.
Mm-hmm. That's another very good point. Linda?
Well, I mean, basically, I think there's never a right time to have a baby. You can never plan it. to make it perfect. For me, I had my perfusion career right out of college, and then was married, and it was another 7 years before, we thought all of a sudden, wow, maybe we should start a family. So, and I was in New York. I was the only certified perfusionist working at my hospital, and they really, depended on me. And so when I got pregnant, I worked all the way through my pregnancy until the day that I left and said, okay, that's it. I'm supposed to deliver next week. I got to get out of here. And really everybody was saying, Linda, that's enough. And I said, yes.
That is enough.
That evening we went out and had a big pizza, and then I had my daughter, my first daughter.
Wow.
You guys can hear me? Because you pause every once in a while. It's hard for me to.
We can.
You do
So,
too. We lose
then
you. But you come back.
My next two, they're all 18, and I had my husband on the weekends, so when I had to bring in help, so I hired a nanny. We had a nanny in our house living with us for 15 years.
Wow.
Until the kids were, and that's how we did it. So we paid through the nose for that. It was all cash, of course, out of our pockets, but this is how we managed. And we were able at the hospital to take 6 weeks of time off, and then you could marry that to your 4 weeks vacation that you got. So I took 10 weeks off each time. And I also, I did breastfeed, so I pumped at the hospital, and I used to keep a little case, and we did that for as long as we could, and so my kids think that that was completely normal. And only one time did one of my girls say to me, well, what do you care? You're never here anyway, and it kind of, I thought, oh boy, have I done the right thing, But in the end, all three of my children are professional. All three of them work really hard. And I think that you're their role model. So as much as it kills you to try to figure out, am I doing the right thing? You are. If it's the right thing for your family, you are.
Those are very good points, Linda. Thank you for that. I've got a lot of thoughts about this from a man's perspective.
Interesting.
But I want to wait.
Let the other.
Yeah, Erin, you're next. Yeah, I'm going last.
Okay. Like I said, I got into the field because my first, and he was so difficult. So with the second pregnancy I had, I was in perfusion school, and I told one person, and their suggestion was for me to drop out and come back in a year. And I got scared, and I didn't tell anybody I was pregnant then. So I just kind of kept it to myself. And all of a sudden I popped, and everyone's like, what's going on here, And they're like, when are you due? And I said, well, like about 4 more weeks. And they're like, you're 9 months pregnant? I didn't tell anybody.
Wow.
And,
Oh my God.
because I was scared, I was fortunate I had a full ride to Cleveland Clinic. And I didn't want to lose my scholarship, and I didn't want to, be behind the ball if my son I already had, had another health scare. So I just trudged right along, but I nursed a long time, and thank goodness I was still in school. There's only a couple instances that not to be too descriptive, but maybe like soaked through, and I was like, okay, someone's got to let me up now, or now I gotta go now. But I did not have any other kids because it was a daunting thought to try to manage it as the primary perfusionist. And so I think that it is a huge consideration for those that time their life to have the career, then the family. And I think that everyone's advice has been, sometimes you just can't plan these things, and we're all resilient and tough, smart people, and you just get through it. And it's just one logical step after the next.
Very good.
Thank you, Erin.
Yeah, Terry?
Hey, so a little bit about the experience I had. I'm happy to say I was really fortunate with my team and my hospital, North Shore University Health System in Illinois. They did offer paternity and maternity leave. And my chief, I told him after my first trimester, and he, was very happy for us and wanted me to communicate with him as to what I needed as the pregnancy progressed. So I was able to take 12 weeks off for both my children, and I worked on a team with 4 or 5, depending on the year, team members. So we had a large staff in order to cover all of our cases, and they were all very supportive. And just like a lot of us have mom guilt, I had perfusionist guilt.
Right.
I felt guilty for having somebody, go out of their way for me, because I'm a very independent person, and I don't, want to put that burden on someone else. But everyone on my team, from the 1 or 2 women to 2, or 3 men that I worked with, they were all very supportive during that time. And we actually had a male coworker who took 6 weeks off for the birth of his first child. So, it is sad to hear how Stephanie pointed out that the U.S. is way behind on their maternity leave benefits. In our country, it's kind of embarrassing. And family leave is important to men and women, and I think it's very important to have the men on our teams part of the conversation and coming up with the plans for the department and what we're going to do, in order to support anyone who would have to take any time off.
I feel like
Yeah,
it's even harder for men to ask for time off for that.
Very hard.
Well,
Erin,
I
go
meant
ahead.
to say too, in the process of this, my husband did leave his college degree and went into a field where he could work afternoons. He has a computer degree. He currently does e-commerce software, but he worked afternoons, and that way we could split our parenting responsibilities. And so while I was up and at 'em, before the sun came up, he was up and at 'em when the sun was going down. And because we didn't have the opportunity to take a leave of absence, he left his field of expertise and took a totally different job so that he could work an alternate shift.
Yeah, that's very interesting. With your permission,
Go.
There's so many things that have gotten brought up here, and I'm trying to sort of process it all, and I've got more like provocative questions perhaps than I have any answers. I mean, at the end of the day, I don't really know even how I feel about this. But you had mentioned, Erin, that you had, was it Terry? No, Erin. Which one of you had perfusionist guilt?
Terry.
It was Terry. Terry, you had perfusionist guilt. That's right. I had the opposite. I worked all the time, young in my career. Of course, I started in '77, right? So that's quite a while ago, and it was a very different time. But I missed every birthday. I missed every school activity. I missed every Christmas. I missed every Thanksgiving. I missed every. I've actually gone and apologized to my children. I've sat down with them and told them. I mean, they're grown people. I mean, my children are older than you. And but I've apologized to them because they've told me, and we had a good conversation. Would have rather had you than all the crap that you were able to buy, because that's what you thought was important, and that's what I thought was important. Was my mentality. I think that there are, we've seen this profession go from glut to not enough to glut to shortage. I mean, the pendulum swings, and it stays in the sweet spot for a very brief period of time. And, depending on the time you're having this desire to have a family, there's things out of your control. So can you pick a job in a big enough place, an institution will say? Is there a job available in that institution where they have these kinds of programs and processes available for what it is you want to do? So you have to, and then that can change. You can go to work for a big institution and you're 4 weeks from delivering, and all of a sudden all their staff leaves, and that can happen anywhere in the country. And all of a sudden you're down to nothing. And now what do you do? Now you're going to have guilt, because how am I going to leave here, stay out with my child, knowing that all of my friends, my colleagues, people I work with have nothing? But yet at the same time, you ask yourself, what's our society interested in? We talk the big game about, we care about family. We love family. We want people to have families. We want work-life balance. It's all changing. It all and sometimes it's one way someplace and some way another place. You never really know what it's gonna be until you're there, and then that can change. You take a job in a place where you have this beautiful work-life balance, and in 5 years, it's a pit. And you can go to a pit, and 5 years later, it's utopia. And so it's just very complicated. And from an employer perspective, now, I'll talk about that briefly. I don't want to belabor it, but we made the decision, and we have had the experience of having a clinical person that has not started a family, but is adding to their family. Now we didn't do the 90 days, but we did 60 days. But we didn't do unpaid, we did paid. And then beyond that, I think we would probably go longer, but they would have to accept the loss of pay at that point in time, because as a small business, that's a real burden. And could you imagine 2 people pregnant at the same time? And that would, for a small practice, that would be devastating. And yet at the same time, I feel like I can say this, and I feel like I'm really being, I'm really looking at myself and considering what I'm going to say here. I don't think I have ever, as an employer, looked at somebody that I was going to hire and factored that into the equation. And that's not just saying it to pat myself on the back. I really mean it. However, as a business owner, as a practice manager, as a person who has to make sure the positions are filled and we are able to perform the work that we do so we have a viable business, it is something that I worry about. But I don't think about, if that makes sense. Worry about it, but I don't think about it. I don't let it I have not allowed it to influence, or it hasn't influenced my hiring sort of, how I've managed hiring people. But it is an issue. And how much of this, again, not trying to, blame anybody for anything, but if you're taking I'll be right with them. Tell them I'll be right with them. Yeah, we'll be right with them. They can stay on the line. You can put them on the line.
They're ready. 5 minutes.
Okay, it just won't take long. But just have to be patient. I'm sorry. I'm doing the best I can. But how much is the individual's responsibility? Do you take a job as a solo perfusionist in the middle of who knows where, and you want to start a family, knowing that when you do, that place is either going to say, well, what are you going to say? If they're a big institution, they're going to have to accept, but it wouldn't be one person, but a hospital is going to have more than 50 employees, any hospital. So they're going to stay? Are they going to get a per diem person? What's the cost of that going to be? It's a small practice. That's a real problem. Go ahead. I have rambled.
This is, yeah, just eventually, I was going to discuss that. Stephanie and I had talked about alternatives for women perfusionists, and you know, what is available outside of clinical or working for a small company or a one-person account. And a lot of people have turned to industry, or they've turned to per diem work or traveling. And some people have, you know, made alternative lifestyles out of these same predicaments. And I can talk about that later.
But Erin,
Yeah,
part of our conversation today is we want to keep women in perfusion, you know, and not for.
Well, they can still be, yeah,
You know what I
perfusionists.
mean? I mean, we want to provide an environment where I'm glad they have opportunities to do other things. But when my sister, who's in college now, asked me, like, should I go into perfusion or nursing? I pushed her towards nursing because it was going to be an easier path for her.
We're hiring, Stephanie.
And
what'd you do that
I'm being
for?
honest. I'm being honest. And I wish now, you know, looking back, that we need people like my sister that are ambitious and smart to enter into perfusion. So I feel like we do need to address these issues so that we don't lose good talent.
Mm-hmm. I think it's a good point. But I think,
Yeah.
too, that we have to accept that not every job is right. I think it is not right for every person. And I think that there's two sets of responsibilities. There's the responsibility of the employer to not just talk the talk about caring about work-life balance and families, but also there's a responsibility on the employee to recognize that this job is going to require this, and should I put my employer in that position? I think you should be having those, to your point, and I think you brought this up, you should be having those conversations before you take the job, until we get to the point, this is where it gets really sticky, until we get to the point where the pendulum was swung back the other way, and now everybody's just people. You remember the days when people couldn't even find a job,
Right.
and you don't have the pick of the litter anymore. So I think that's something we need to be aware of too, as the senior people, as the person like yourself who's on the board, sort of where is this industry going, and how are we going to guide these younger people into making good professional decisions about where they go to work. I think that's going to be very important. We have a caller, you said? Okay, I'm so sorry it took us a long time to get to you, but who's calling? Hello? Hello?
Did you hang up? Can we call back?
Did they hang up?
No.
Hello? Are you on mute? You have to take your mute off. Okay, well, let's just
And
go on with the
also-
conversation. Oh, hey,
Oh, hi.
who is this?
It's Greg again.
Hey, Greg. Okay.
It's,
Hey, sorry it took us a while to get back to you.
I got nothing better to do with. That's all right.
Greg, I don't think that's complimentary. But go ahead.
Taking the job for the reason I have a lot of, when I first came out, I worked for a contractor, and lost the account. I had to take another job with a private contractor. At that time, my wife was pregnant, so the as far as benefits weren't as good because we were a small company. The weeks I had to take off.
Greg, we're losing you on the sound, man. You need to get a better. Can you get a better cell? Yeah. Okay. Let him call back. Greg, we didn't hear you. If you could just get a better, I think your cell coverage may have been a little weak. Just call back when you can. We'll take your call for sure. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I was going to say one thing. Not every pregnancy is planned, and not every family leave is planned. You could get sick, a family member sick, every job,
That's true.
you should ask before you start, what is the plan for that? And
But if you took a
because
job,
life happens.
life happens.
it does. Life does happen. But if you take a job in a place with 2 perfusionists, let's just hypothetically say, you know, Hospital X, or in some town in, you know, Indiana, in Indiana, and you're the only 2 people there. You work for the hospital. I mean, you know, that is a different scenario than you work at a place with 17 or 20 clinicians. And should you be, you know, yes, you're right, life happens, but I'm talking about in the planned circumstance. I mean, if that happens and there's a crisis, you would hope people would rally together and figure that out. Now, I think that, you know, everybody in medicine now, from the, you know, top, the surgeons on, you know, through the mid-levels, us, you know, into nursing, everybody's really sort of catching on. And I think it's reasonable for this work-life balance thing, and not just living, breathing, eating, and whatever else, you know, pumping your life away at the pump, you know. So, but
I thought you were talking about pumping.
I was.
Not pumping.
I was talking about. I was trying to make a joke.
I got it.
You got it. Good. So I think that's changing. But at the same time, hospitals, and I don't know that this is really different. Hospitals have been hospitals for as long as I know. They're looking at the numbers. How long can this person be off for? What is our policy? I'm sorry, you know, this isn't personal, but we have to, you know, we have to move on now. You're off without pay. Yeah, you can come back if we have the position available, but we just can't do it any more than we're doing, because we have to fill this position, and we can't hold it for you forever, and we can't pay this per diem rate. They're going to look at it from a completely business perspective. It's not going to be personal, because they don't know you, you know, and they don't care. I mean, some do, and there are the odd places that do. And there's always exceptions. But by and large, what are they going to do? They got to run a business. That's what they're doing.
Even one of the larger hospitals downtown had to hire some per diem help for their maternity leave over
That's
the last
true.
year.
Us.
So, I know. So you can't even go by that, like a large hospital being able to provide that. But that's why we have the FMLA law, that they have to hold your job for 12 weeks, you know, to protect employees.
But if you have a complicated pregnancy, vis-a-vis the case that happened with Erin, then after 12 weeks, what happens? They don't have to hold your job anymore?
They do not.
Right. And so at the worst time,
Right.
right.
It's fuel to the fire.
It sure is, you know. These are, I mean, this is a very provocative set of talks today. I got to tell you, this opens up so many questions and concepts. You know, I feel that there's going to be people who are going to be, I think most people are going to be in the middle with this. But I think there's going to be, I think it's polarizing. Some people are going to be way off this side, and some people way off the other side.
So let me throw this out. If more fathers are taking paternity leave, that means overall there are going to be more people off in general over a 5-year span. You would need to have staff to cover that. You know what I mean? Like, knowing that you're going to have more employees taking leave.
Which increases costs.
It does, yes.
You know, which of course is counterintuitive to business, right?
Correct.
Because that's always an issue. And then how does that affect, let me ask you this. Our company, and I talked to you about this before, not every company is the same, and it doesn't make us special. It's just I'm stating a fact. We have couples that work for us. You know, at one time we have whole families that work for us actually, which is kind of funny.
True.
But there's a lot of places that do not permit that to happen.
Right.
They say absolutely not. You can't be married in the same apartment.
Well, most companies, if they're with that 12 weeks or if they offer paid time, if you are spouses that work in that company, that time it gets split either between just one takes all of the majority of the time, or they each take half. That's how I saw most companies dealing with that issue of spouses working together.
Same.
Yeah, it's a good thought.
Okay.
Well, I think that all of this is great, and that's why what Terry's done and what Linda's done through all her and Anne is we really just need to support each other, right? Because there are a lot of different scenarios, and this is, definitely as the woman's body is, giving life, either, if she's nursing a child or she's pregnant, is a difference in our field, and it's a huge consideration. But on the same token,
The dog.
we need the support of the community to figure out these challenges and how to address them and stuff, either on the small or the large group of the practice that you're in.
Right.
And, but yeah, it brings up a lot of other larger, topics, but really us women, I think this mentorship program that's starting, hopefully this telecast will kind of project that forward, and, we can continue to look at the issues and decide, what is the best or what's not, like for Stephanie's sister, and that's a consideration for her. For Terry and her situation now, she's got, young girls and a move, and she's explored other things in Linda. You've had, a 15-year relationship with someone that meant a lot to you and your kids. But we need to have a network and support for all the different approaches that women, fathers, domestic partners, we all are dealing with.
Very good. Very well put, Erin. I appreciate that so very much. That was very okay. We do have a caller. You're on the air. Is this Greg back?
Yes, this is Greg.
Hey. Oh, that's a much better
can you hear me?
connection. You very well.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I had my two different devices going at the same time. And kind of, I love the talk you guys are having. It's a key point right now, and as far as hiring individuals, I think we're at a point where I think the administration is recognizing the need for perfusion, what we do and how we do things. The days of covering a 100 case per year account with 4 people, you can imagine that. At one point I was at a place that had that. And, 2-3 fathers, 1 female. Prior to that, I worked for a contract provider that had 2 accounts, actually several accounts actually, 2 in the Pennsylvania area. And I was lucky enough to be hired because they were able to acquire another account. At that account, there was a male and a female, and then the female became pregnant. And over time, I think after the use of that FMLA, Pennsylvania's laws and whatever, I think the individual actually left our company because of this difficulty that she encountered while she was pregnant with this employer. And eventually she terminated her for the reason, and may not be correct, was that when she did go out on leave, it was 50% of the workforce that was now left, was now not able to work for him and cover that account. So unfortunately, we lost the account. I had to move on, went to another smaller employer, but had an account that had 900 cases per year with 4 individuals, but the insurance wasn't good. My wife was pregnant, and then that anxiety that we as perfusionists, once you become a parent, whether father, female, male, who's going to be there to provide that? If your wife's a professional in different entities, which my wife was, that who's going to pick the child up? I'm on call. Can I pick her up? Who's going to be? Do we have a sitter? There's all these things. So ramble on and on, but I guess it's great. I did suggest perhaps some of the newer staff who haven't female, they're joining our department. They move on. We want to keep these individuals. They're
valuable.
female. So how can we make this a place where they want to stay? You know, so that and what we had to, think about was the contingency. We do have females, and we just, I don't know if you saw my remark, but we had 4 individuals that over the past 6 months that became, that established a new family. 3 kids, a 4th was coming into the picture. He took off. One became a new father, a new daughter that we became, she was pregnant as we realized her. But we made contingency for her to have that contact. She took the 12 weeks. But could because her term wasn't long enough to provide with the 12 weeks of FMLA.
Yeah.
And, but like I said, to now, in a different time and day that we're in, where there is an ability, I think, for some to do that. Okay, is this job for me? And I always say to my words of wisdom, take a job for the right reason and understand if you.
Yeah. Hey, Greg, you're breaking up again, but I think we get your thoughts, and we're going to address it online. So I don't know if you were able to hear everything Greg said. A little bit of it was difficult to understand, but
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Thanks,
Thank
Greg.
you.
Well, how do we work? I think, Aaron brought it up in terms of, could there be some per diem? Could there be some traveling? And I kind of have a question for Linda, being in a large contract group. Is it easy to plug holes and fill gaps when these things come up in different
Great
accounts under the company? Or is it still as difficult as it would be for the smaller,
For me.
for the small business person? She's on mute.
Linda, did you hear us?
Are you on mute?
Oh, you're on mute still, Linda. You have to come off mute. Poor Linda. Linda's the beauty of
All right,
live.
here we go.
There we go.
All right,
Yeah.
so here we go. Sorry. It has been difficult just in the last couple of years with the shortage. However, we're in a better position because we actually have perfusionists hired as travelers. So those travelers will go in and they will do, maternity leaves and things like that. Other things that I've heard just in regular hospital situations is some of the perfusionists split positions. So they're either 2 part-time employees or just two employees that are full-time that split the position. So there's creative ways to do it. And if you want to make it happen, if you have a good we had a lot of creative scheduling that we did at Columbia, and we have a great deal of creative scheduling that we do with specialty care. So we can make it work.
Yes.
That's just a matter of putting your heads together and trying to figure it out.
Yes, and I think compromise on everybody's part.
Right.
Both the employer and the employees.
Right.
So, Aaron, how about some final thoughts? I think we probably need to go around and do final thoughts.
Okay.
Just thank you guys for this. As Linda and I have discussed in the past, it just wasn't quite the time to do a women in perfusion support group. We talked about it years ago, took a bunch of notes. Linda has tried for years in all her positions of responsibility to get something like this up and running, and it just was not the time. I think she was way ahead of her time, and perhaps Anne, as you as well. I would like to get to know you better. But this is just the edge of the iceberg. And I just thank you, Joe, for the opportunity. Stephanie, what a brave and courageous person that you are. And I'm just so glad to have you also as a mentor. Terry, you as well. And I hope that this is just a sounding board for a bright future, and a future where we can get a good balance, where we can keep the good ones and recruit the good ones.
I like that. Very nice.
you,
And thank you. That was very nice of you to say. Linda? I mean, not Linda. I mean, Terry? I get Linda and Terry mixed up.
You do.
Terry?
Yeah, just some final thoughts on this topic we were just discussing. I can't tell you how many times my chief had to justify to the administrators the number of staff we had covering all of our cases. The most we ever had was 6 people on staff, and we were responsible for covering hearts at 3 different hospitals, including auto transfusion for orthopedic and neuro cases. And even though our, heart number cases may have been between that 500 to 600 range across all 3 institutions, we had an additional 200 or more auto transfusion cases to cover, plus TAVR cases to cover.
Yep.
And they didn't, factor in those numbers when it came to, well, how many perfusionists do we really need? Especially when most of us were long-term employees and had already gotten to the point where we were getting 21 to 25 days off for vacation and continuing education. So at any one point, we basically had one person off a week every month. Mm-hmm. And so I just wanted to kind of put that point out there.
And could you imagine if somebody was pregnant and delivered early at the same time?
Right. I mean,
with that caseload?
Well, I have to comment to Terry, I don't think it's unusual. I think most of us, staffing-wise, we're on the edge. We don't have any wiggle room in terms of absorbing something very unexpected. And I agree that when it comes to administration, understanding the number of people needed, we make good salaries, benefits. I know from a perspective of watching the numbers, I get where they don't realize, I think, what they need. And it's hard to make that argument for some reason. Yeah. It seems to be hard. And, we're taking on more responsibility in more different places that require more bodies in different places at the same time. And, when they just want to look at your number of heart surgeries, they're missing the picture. And, so do you need to hire different types of people instead of just perfusionists, maybe, but again, probably another topic. We could have another whole
this is
discussion.
Good. I'm thinking through. I agree. I think so.
How can we work differently? Really, I think a lot of people, and maybe women, and the panel can chime in on this, but do they leave the profession because you got to be all in or you're out? In other words, if you're not that full-time person taking full-time call, then you're really not a perfusionist on the team. Why does it have to look like that all the time?
Absolutely.
Isn't there, like Linda was saying, getting creative with your scheduling, splitting positions? Why aren't we having more of that conversation? Is it a stigma that, I'm not a perfusionist if I'm not all in all the time? Or, what is it in our profession? Mm-hmm. We don't seem to do as good a job there as some other professions, and I'm not sure why.
Very good points. I want you to, but I do want to say this to everybody that's here, though. I want this last section watched by everybody on your team with these cases and places and all of that.
Numbers, you're saying?
Yeah, I just want all of this.
Thanks for that, Terry.
I'm going to replay this a whole bunch of times.
Okay, I'm going to conclude with Joe and I spend every day problem solving. There's issue after issue. And this is just one issue that there's questions, but no question is unsolvable. And everyone might not get it, like we always say, 100% what they want, but there is always a way to have professional discussions and compromise and to come up with solutions that we can make work for everyone.
Mm-hmm. Do I compromise fairly well?
You do.
I do? Oh,
you
good.
do. You do.
I want to have something for that. All right. Okay.
All right.
Well, I want to thank everyone. I want to thank everyone for allowing me to be a part of this discussion today as the outnumbered one. And I appreciate that so very much. It has been a pleasure. It's been an honor. It's been insightful and enlightening and informative. I'm just really, I can't say enough positive things about the idea, about with what you're doing, Terry, with your site. I hope we can help you promote this. I think it'd be fantastic. Erin, your story is incredible.
Yes.
Linda, you know, where you have gotten in your career, you know, through hard work, dedication, and in the position that you're in now with your current employer, Specialty Care, a huge organization. You've moved definitely up, so you should be proud of yourself too, to have accomplished as much as you have. And, you know, all of the years that you have dedicated to this business, both you and your husband, Sal, you know, you're all well known, you're well respected, you know, people know who you are. More people know you than you know. And that's when you know you have achieved a certain level in your profession. And all of you have achieved that level. There's no question about it. But Ann, you definitely have. Stephanie, I don't really have to problem solve that much anymore because Stephanie solves all the problems. Sometimes she'll ask me, but really she's just telling me, and I just agree. I just nod my head and agree. I've become a very good administrator. Yes, that sounds good. But you've done a great job today. You put together a hell of a program, probably one of the best I've done all year. Or obviously since we started this Perf Web program. I just want us all to do it again. Other topics, you know, we want to help you, Terry and Erin, with your endeavors. I think that has value, and I think we need to help promote that. But I also think that this group of people has such a vast level of experience and perspective that so many other topics can be discussed by this group of people. We need to figure out a way that we can do this again in the not too distant future with whatever topic. So if you all have something that you have a passion about, you know, email it to me, call me, talk to Stephanie, whatever you want to do, and you can call me anytime. All of you can, and let's work together for the common goal of improving patient outcomes, but also the professional experience, whether a man or a woman, as a perfusionist, you're going to have for your career, young, middle, old, whatever it may be. I think we all have just a lot to say and a lot of perspectives that are going to help a lot of people. That's my view. So thank you.
I love that.
Yep.
Thank you all very
Well
much.
said.
Thank you so much. Okay, so everybody out there in web world, thank all of these folks. Send them a message on the various platforms and stuff. They'll see it. They'll get it. Join Terry's group. By the way, what is the group? I mean, here we are sitting here. What's your What's the Facebook group?
Yeah.
So the Facebook group is called Women in Perfusion.
Women in
And
Perfusion.
If you just go on Facebook and search for that in the search bar, it'll pop up.
Okay. Women.
It's open to perfusion students, current practicing perfusionists, retired perfusionists.
But do you have to be a woman?
Well, you have to be a woman.
Okay.
Yeah, you do. Sorry.
Okay. So
unless you can talk about
for
breast pumping while on pump. But really.
You know what? I'm not touching
Probably
this.
don't want to be part of
I'm
our
not
group.
saying anything because I know it will deteriorate. I'm just going to let it go, Terry. However, for all of you perfusionists out there that happen to also be women, go to Women in Perfusion on Facebook, join Terry's page, and get involved in your professional development.
Yeah.
Be a part of the solution, not just existing. That's what I recommend everybody do. And we will see you. When is our next program? 23rd. April 23rd. Don't forget, April 23rd, we're going to have Tracy Howarth talking about common youth behaviors with serious societal implications, but health implications as well. Work-life balance of the perfusionist. Tammy Sparacino is going to be giving that talk. Also on that Saturday, the 25th, we're going to be talking about some information on coronavirus. And everybody, don't forget about the Corona 30. This is a program I put together from April 27th to May 1st, Monday through Friday, for 3 weeks straight. If you have any financial hardship at all, you have issues with getting paid at work, you've lost your job, you need to keep your certification, just send us an email. We are offering that program for anyone who needs it, all of the CEUs for free. So all you have to do is ask for it, and we will do the program, and all of the CEUs are given with no cost. And so look the website up, Perfweb and perfusioneducation.com. With that said, we'll see you on the 23rd. Thank you again, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
We'll see you later.